next up we have Forte11, correct? Come on up here. Great. Let's give them the hand. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. La conferencia tiene como nombre
So the conference is called Adopting Bitcoin in Cuba, specifically Community Cuba Bitcoin. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story of the work we have been doing in my beautiful country. Okay. Okay. Well, the history of Cuba. Cuba initially was habitated by Aborigines communities that were not as developed as the other cultures, like the Mayas, like the Aztecs and the Inks. Then Christopher Columbus, the discoverer of America, he was the one who discovered America for the old continent. Because America was previously discovered by the originate peoples. So the discovery of Cuba was on October 27 of 1942. And from that moment, a process of colonization started from the Hispanic culture. The first locals from the island were technically annihilated by the Spaniards, so they had to look for workforce in Africa. And then a process of transculturization started, a process full of blood, but a process that defined Cuban. That union between the Spanish, the European, the white man with the African. And in my country there was a slavery, so the Cuban wanted to be free. Cubans wanted to be able to create the future, to be able to take decisions. That's what the Cuban want. That's what Cubans in 1868 wanted. So we had the first war for the national liberation of my people, which is the war of the 10 years from 1868 to 1878. The first person to raise in arms was Carlos Manuel de Céspedes and Castillo. Here we can see an image of the Mambises. Mambises were warriors who identified in American wars because they were the last warriors who were horse riders. The last warriors holding machetes, which was their characteristic weapon, and they charged against the Spanish forces. And then we have the most well-known from Cubans, José Martí. When he was 15 years old, he wrote a letter where he complained with a classmate because he was joining the Spanish army, and he declared his friend as a traitor of the country. Because of this, José Martí went to jail, and since he was very young, since he was 15 years old, he was suffering from the repression through change, through forced labor. And this was done to a child of 15 years old, and he was marked all his life because of this. And if we study history and the works from José Martí, because this is a beautiful life, and I really invite you to study his life because it was really beautiful and inspiring. And by that we can understand how big this man was. José Martí understands that we have to hold word, what he called a necessary war. And then he prepared from outside the country, from abroad, a necessary word to finish the liberation of the Cuban island, to get rid of the colonialism from Spain. And abroad, he joined forces, he created the Revolutionary Political Party of Cuba. That's the first word of revolution in Latin America that was directed by a political party. And he dies on May 19, 1895. From that moment on, Cuba was free from the Spanish colonialism. But then the United States of America came. Through other events, the Cuban Revolution starts with the character of Fidel Castro Ruz from 1926 to 2016. He was president of Cuba during many years. Then it comes Raúl Castro, who is Fidel Castro's brother. And nowadays, the country is directed by President Miguel Díaz-Canel. It's the first time in Cuba that we have a president that didn't fight in the last war. And then for you to understand the economic situation of Cuba, here you have some data before 2021. $1 equals 1 CUC. Before in Cuba we had two currencies, the CUC and the Cuban pesos. $1 was equivalent to 25 Cuban pesos and 1 CUC was equivalent to 25 Cuban pesos. So there was an equality between the dollars and the Cuban pesos. The families abroad used to send remittances to the state. They sent the money and then the government gave a voucher to the people. The average salary in Cuba was 500 CUP, more or less, and the ones who earned the most money earned around 1,000 CUP by that time. In Cuba we had the internet from 2014. Then some public Wi-Fi zones started to be opened, and on December 2018 the access to internet was authorized through cell phones. Then we're going to see the price of this, and then remember the average salary of a Cuban. So for 30 hours with a speed of 512 kilobytes per second was 30 CUC. For 1024 kilobytes 50 CUC, and for 2048 kilobytes 70 CUC. If you wanted to have a fastest and more stable connection, it was necessary to earn, I don't know, 3-4 times the average salary just to pay the internet. Then the fare for international callings and to have access to international websites, you have these prices over here, and this is very interesting information. And then the mobile data arrive. Here you see the plans of mobile data. Let's remember that these are CUPs. You can divide this by 25 and you will get the equivalent in dollars. Then on 2022 there was a reordering of the currency. There you had the Cuban island in the middle of the crisis due to the pandemic. Then they decided to reorder the currency. Cuba, we had a parity between the Cuban peso and the dollar, but that was an illusion. And we, the Cubans, we paid for that. And then we're going to see how the story continues. Then we had first the elimination of the currency CUC. Then the people who was saving in CUC, for example, if I had 100 CUC, those 100 were multiplied by 24, and then I got the result in pesos. Then we had the creation of MLC, which was a new currency created. Those amounts were put into a card. There was a rise in salaries and pension. There was a reduction of help to the population. In theory, salaries in Cuba should be the lowest one, around $84, and an average salary around $160 if $1 was equal to 25 CUP. But let's see what happened. The data changed after the reordering from 2021. Then the dollar in Cuba reaches the value of 258 and 26 CUP. So the Cuban, in less than 2 years, has lost 10 times his power of acquisition. The explanation we have for this, for you to Bitcoiners to understand, if a Cuban had bought Bitcoin, even if Bitcoin had reduced its price, the Cuban would have more CUP. So the Cuban reality is this. Before, Cuban salaries were around $500, but nowadays the lowest salary is about $8.14. And then you have an average salary of $15.05. So internet comes to Cuba. Then the Cuban had a lot of wishes to invest, to put their money to work. Then we have some Ponzi schemes like Cataparts, Aristar, Sadly, and Arbistar. We were an easy prey from these scammers. We didn't have experience. We were lacking information, real information, valuable information. And then with the Cubans, we learned from this. So Max alerts the Cubans. So from this moment, the Cuban authorities took action against these pyramidal schemes. And we can see that from this moment, the official newspaper of the Communist Party of Cuba, they published the news. They advise not to get into any relationship with international enterprises that offer the exchange of goods and assets. Then, I want to clarify something. Since the moment the Cuban Revolution got into the power, the United States implanted an economical blocus to the Cuban island. The goal of this blocus is to restrict the Cuban government and replace it. And the ones who are paying this sanction is the Cuban population. And after 60 years, this blocus has just made the Cuban people poorer. And it didn't reach the goal. So Visa and MasterCard, Hazelphone, we cannot have these services. I cannot use Binance, I can use Coinbase because I'm a Cuban who is inside Cuba. And then we started to see a way to see remittances, one way to transmit that value without any third party. So the Central Bank of Cuba wanted to regulate the use of cryptocurrency in Cuba. This law doesn't make any sense. And then the community Cuba INP2P was born by Francisco Calderon, a Venezuelan. And this association was created, this community was created in August 2022. And like this way, we Cubans can exchange Bitcoin without any third party having the control of our money. And of course, we start to standardize the use of Lightning Network in the island. Before, of course, there were people who were using these services already, but with the impact made by this community, Cuba Bitcoin, from the creation of the community of Cuban Bitcoiners, the Cuban wanted to learn in a technical way about Bitcoin. They didn't just want to buy Bitcoin, but they wanted to learn the technical part of Bitcoin. That's why the community Cuba Bitcoin was born. This community is focused on Bitcoin education through the island. The activities that this community has made, we have had some meetups online. We have advised entrepreneurs to use Bitcoin in their businesses. And we have 21 enterprises who are using Bitcoins. We have 21 businesses who are using Bitcoin. We have give advice on security, privacy, etc. Then all of this opened the doors to Cuban to let us have trainings, technical trainings on Bitcoins, so we can share, so we can learn. And of course, Dulce Villarreal, she has been fundamental for this in the technical education of Bitcoin. She has helped us a lot. She has helped us to learn a lot. And then we made the first Bitcoin meetup in the island on May the 28th, 2023. We had the opportunity to have Joan Nakamoto and Paco. We brought them to the island. And then, well, here you have some picture. There were many Cubans. There was a lot of interest on Bitcoin. And then you can see the picture. I think pictures are a proof of this. And then John Nakamoto releases a documentary, The Truth Behind Cuba's Bitcoin Revolution. I really recommend you this documentary. And then you have the anniversary of the community on August the 6th, 2023. We wanted to bring the first node of Bitcoin in Cuba. We wanted to have the program of My First Bitcoin in Cuba. And that was the perfect program for Cubans to have a foundation. Therefore, we printed some books for the course. We have been receiving some support on the teaching methodology. We have had podcasts, articles, videos. And this is held at the local that is called Too Much. All of this was completely free. This is focused for businessmen, for entrepreneurs. And we had this course during 7 consecutive Saturdays. The beautiful thing about my Bitcoin course is that it's adaptable to the knowledge and the necessities of the communities. And in addition to the topics from the course, we have other topics. We studied Bitcoin wallets, and we had a workshop about buying and selling Bitcoin. We also studied the transactions, the nodes, a basic curve of privacy, an introduction to cryptography, something a little bit more challenging. We also taught how to generate seeds manually. We had a final test with 22 questions, 20 attendees, and 100% of people graduated. We also had an entrepreneurship fair of Bitcoiners. Here you have a photo of the first promotion. And well, here we have John. He's very well known here at Adoption. Then we have another picture. We had some businesses like a Dennis Graphic. They are one of the first students who approved the course. And then after taking the course, he decided to start accepting Bitcoin at his business. He was a non-coiner, and then he started to accept Bitcoin at his business. We also had another project that is called Cerecit, which creates a mechanism so we can save physically our seeds. And this is the beautiful thing, how Cubans, they try to find solutions once they have the knowledge. Then we downloaded the chain of Bitcoin, we copy them, so everyone could create their own nodes. And the goals that Cuba Bitcoin has, we want to help to create more nodes all over Cuba. We want to continue implementing My First Bitcoin course. We want to form more teachers so they can teach the lessons. We want 100,000 Cuban graduated from the course, and we want 10,000 Cuban graduated from specialized courses. We want to spread and make conscious about the responsible use of Bitcoin. We want more Cuban businesses accepting Bitcoin. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to get a circular economy in Cuba. But in order to do that, we need your help. How can you help You can share this on social media so we can reach more students and sponsors. You can help in the way that you're able to. The teachers, you can join the community, give advice to make classes better. You can make donations. What are we going to do with these donations? We're going to print books, diplomas, t-shirts. We're going to use it for transportation, and we're going to give snacks. How can you help creating a circular economy in Cuba? If you have a freelance enterprise, if you have a business, offer a remote employment for Cubans. Buy at businesses that accept bitcoins. Go to Cuba if you want and buy from these businesses that accept bitcoins and join the Bitcoin Cuban community on Telegram. Here you have our social media. I wish you could join this social media, and I want you to finish with a phrase that was never said in adopting Bitcoin. And I want to thank this opportunity that Cuba is present for the first time in adopting Bitcoin, and I would like to thank you all for being here. Gentlemen, long live Cuba!